Captain Taekwon stood on the bridge of the Wanderer, watching the stars blur past the viewport. 3 months into humanity's first deep space voyage, and they had seen nothing but empty space and distant suns. Earth felt like a memory now, though the mission had barely begun. His crew of 42 moved quietly through their stations, checking readings and monitoring the engines that bent space around their small ship. "Captain, we have something," Lieutenant Woo Hyun called from the tactical station. His voice was steady, but Tae could hear the edge of excitement underneath. "Multiple contacts bearing 270. They're not moving like asteroids." Dr. Ji-Hana rushed to the sensor console, her dark eyes scanning the data. As the ship's xenobiologist, she had dreamed of this moment her entire life. "They're artificial," she breathed. "Ships. We're looking at alien ships." Admiral Sung Dae's voice crackled through the communication system from Earth, delayed by the vast distance. "Wanderer, you are authorized to make contact. Proceed with caution. This is what we've been waiting for." The alien vessels were beautiful in a way that human ships were not. They curved and flowed like sculptures, colored in soft blues and greens. They moved gracefully through space, adjusting their position to match the Wanderer's speed. Tae felt his heart beating faster. Humanity was no longer alone. Ji-Hana composed a message using mathematics and basic physics, the universal languages they had prepared. Within an hour, the aliens responded. Their language came through in clicking sounds and melodic tones, but the computers quickly found patterns. Communication was possible. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Coalition. They represented 47 different species spread across thousands of worlds. They had been traveling the stars for longer than human civilization had existed. They were peaceful, they said. They were curious about the newcomers. Tae authorized a meeting. 3 coalition representatives came aboard the Wanderer, wearing breathing equipment that let them survive in the ship's atmosphere. They were tall and graceful, with large eyes set on the sides of their heads. Their bodies reminded Tae of deer or antelope, though they walked on 2 legs and their hands had 4 delicate fingers. The lead representative introduced himself as Ambassador Velis. He spoke through a translation device that turned his musical voice into flat, mechanical words. "We welcome you to the greater community," he said. "It is rare to find new intelligent life. We have much to learn from each other." Ji-Hana led the cultural exchange, showing them images of Earth, its cities and oceans, its billions of people. She explained human history, carefully choosing examples that showed humanity's better nature. The coalition representatives watched with what seemed like polite interest. Then Ambassador Velis noticed the small detail that changed everything. He was looking at an image of Tae in his military uniform, and his large eyes fixed on Tae's face. "Your eyes," he said slowly. "They point forward." "Yes," Tae replied, confused by the observation. "All humans have eyes like this." Velis stepped back, his graceful body suddenly tense. "You are predators." The word hung in the air like a threat. Ji-Hana tried to explain. "Our ancestors were hunters, yes, but we evolved beyond that. We're civilized now. We have laws, culture, art." But Velis was not listening. He was looking at all of them now, seeing them differently. "You eat other creatures?" "Some humans eat meat, yes," Ji-Hana admitted. "But many don't. We have choices now." The other coalition representatives were backing away, moving toward their ship. Velis spoke into his communication device in his own language, the musical tones now quick and sharp. He turned back to the humans. "The coalition must discuss this. We will contact you soon." They left quickly, their graceful movements now hurried and frightened. Tae watched their ships pull away, accelerating faster than the Wanderer could match. "What just happened?" Woo Hyun asked. Ji-Hana was reading through the data her computer had collected from the exchange. Her face went pale. "I think we scared them. All the images in their database, all their species, they're all prey animals, herbivores, not a single predator among them." The next 3 weeks brought a flood of messages from Coalition space. At first there were questions. How did humans hunt? How often did they fight each other? What was their history of violence? Ji-Hana answered honestly, explaining that humans had struggled with war and conflict but were working toward peace. She showed them Earth's united government, its laws against violence, its art and music. But the coalition had already made up their minds. The messages became formal, official. Humanity was a dangerous species. Their predatory nature made them unstable and violent. The Coalition had built a peaceful civilization by leaving such primitive behaviors behind. They had evolved past their own predatory ancestors millions of years ago. Humanity threatened that peace simply by existing. Admiral Sung Dae's response came from Earth, his voice hard and angry. "Tell them we have the right to exist. We're not animals, we're people." The final message from Ambassador Velis arrived 1 month after first contact. "The Coalition has voted. Your species will be quarantined to your home system. You will not be allowed to travel beyond your sun's influence. If you attempt to leave, you will be stopped by force. This is for the safety of all civilized species." Tay stood on the bridge reading the message again and again. Around him, his crew was silent. They had come to the stars hoping to join a community of intelligent beings. Instead, they had been judged and found wanting. "Set course for Earth," Tay ordered quietly. "We need to tell them what happened." As the Wanderer turned back toward home, Wu Hyun pulled up the sensor data from the Coalition ships. "Captain, look at this. Their weapon systems, their defensive positions. It's all wrong." "Wrong how?" Tay asked. "Like they've never actually used them. Like they're all theory and no practice." Wu Hyun looked up from his console. "I don't think they know how to fight." Jihana joined them, studying the data. "They said they evolved past their predatory ancestors. What if they meant all predators? What if their civilization has never faced a real threat?" Tay felt a chill run down his spine. The Coalition had just made humanity their enemy, but they had no idea what that meant. They had no concept of what a predator could do when cornered. They thought humanity was primitive and violent, but they had never seen what humans could become when protecting their home. "Get me Admiral Sung," Tay said. "He needs to hear this. All of it." The Wanderer raced toward Earth carrying news that would change everything. Humanity was alone in a galaxy full of civilized prey species who feared them, and that fear would soon turn into something much worse. 6 months had passed since the Wanderer returned to Earth with news of the quarantine. The world had changed in those months. Every nation on Earth, after centuries of conflict and competition, now stood together. The threat from outside had done what no human leader ever could. It had united them. Admiral Sung Dae stood in the command center of the United Defense Fleet, watching the displays that showed Coalition ships surrounding Earth's solar system. There were hundreds of them positioned at every major travel route. They were enforcing the quarantine, making sure no human ship ventured beyond the outer planets. "They're treating us like animals in a cage," Major Jisoo said. She was a Special Forces commander, a woman who had spent 15 years training for combat scenarios that had never come. Now finally her skills might matter. "That's exactly what they think we are," Sung replied. He was an old soldier, his hair gray and his face lined with years of hard decisions. "But they're making a mistake. Caged animals are dangerous." Below Earth's surface, in hidden facilities, Engineer Nayuri was working on weapon systems that no human had needed before. Space combat was theoretical until now, but she was learning fast, taking Earth's military technology and adapting it for the black void between stars. Every day she designed something new, something that would surprise the Coalition forces watching from above. Captain Tae Kwan was back in space, commanding a small fleet of human ships that tested the boundaries of the quarantine. The Coalition ships would move to intercept whenever humans got too close to the invisible line they had drawn. But they never fired. They just moved into position, a silent warning. "They're scared to start a real fight," Lieutenant Wu Hyun observed from the tactical station. "They think just being here is enough." Tae agreed, but he also knew that fear could be unpredictable. Scared people made mistakes, and the Coalition was very scared. The mistake came on a cold Tuesday morning. A mining ship called the New Dawn was returning from Jupiter's moons with a full load of ice and minerals. It had 234 colonists aboard, families who had been living in the outer system for years. The ship was well inside human space, following the same route it always had. The Coalition ships opened fire without warning. The New Dawn tried to turn, tried to run, but it was a slow, heavy vessel built for cargo, not combat. The Coalition weapons tore it apart. There were no survivors. The message from Coalition Marshal Vrenus came 3 hours later. The vessel violated quarantine space. "This is the consequence of breaking Coalition law. We regret the loss of life, but rules must be enforced." Private Kwan Mina heard about the attack while she was training with her Marine unit. Her sister had been on the New Dawn, her sister and her 2 small children. Mina sat in the barracks afterward, her hands shaking, trying to process the fact that they were gone. Just gone because some alien marshal had decided a mining ship was a threat. Admiral Sung Dae reviewed the flight data. The New Dawn had been 30,000 kilometers inside human territory. The Coalition had lied about the violation. They had fired on a civilian ship in human space, murdering hundreds of people, and then blamed the victims. "This is war," Sung said quietly. "They just don't know it yet." Dr. Ji-Hana had stayed with the Coalition, hoping her presence would help maintain some connection between humans and the aliens. She had been living on one of their diplomatic stations, a beautiful place that curved like a shell and had gardens growing in artificial gravity. The Coalition representatives treated her well but kept her separate from their main facilities. She was, she realized, a prisoner who didn't know she was in prison. When she heard about the New Dawn, she demanded to see Ambassador Velis. The graceful alien finally agreed to meet her in a quiet garden, where water fell in slow spirals around exotic plants. "You killed civilians," Ji-Hana said, her voice shaking with anger and grief. "Children. You murdered children and lied about it." Velis looked uncomfortable, his large eyes blinking slowly. "It was Marshal Vrenis's decision. He believes a strong response will make your species understand the seriousness of the quarantine." "Understand?" Ji-Hana stepped closer and Velis instinctively moved back. "You want us to understand? Let me tell you what you've done. You've just given every human in the solar system a reason to hate you. You've proved that you'll kill us without mercy, and you've made this personal." "We are not the violent ones," Velis protested. "Your species has the history of war and hunting. We are simply protecting ourselves. By attacking first? By murdering families?" Ji-Hana laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. "You have no idea what you've started." Back on Earth, the response was swift. Every nation contributed ships, weapons, soldiers. The United Defense Fleet grew from dozens of vessels to hundreds within weeks. Nayuri's weapons were installed, tested, and improved. Major Jisu's special forces practiced boarding actions and combat in zero gravity. Private Mina trained harder than anyone, driven by rage and grief that had nowhere else to go. Captain Tae Kwan was given command of the attack wing, a collection of fast, aggressive ships designed for one purpose. Lieutenant Woo Hyun studied every piece of data they had on Coalition tactics, looking for weaknesses. He found plenty. "They move in predictable patterns," he told Tae. "Like they're following a textbook. They take breaks for rest at regular intervals. They never vary their formation. It's like they've never actually fought anyone." "They haven't," Tae replied. "They've had peace for 2,000 years. They don't know how to do this." The Coalition sent a warning. Marshal Vrenis, speaking from his flagship, told humanity to stand down. "You are outnumbered and outmatched. We have technology beyond your understanding. Do not make us destroy you." Admiral Sung Dae's response was broadcast across every frequency. "You came to our home. You caged us like animals. You murdered our families. Now you'll learn what happens when you corner a predator." The Coalition responded by sending more ships. A punishment fleet, they called it. 200 vessels to show humanity its place. They positioned themselves near Mars, a clear statement of intent. They were coming for Earth. Sung Dae watched them arrive, these graceful alien ships that had never seen real combat. He thought about the New Dawn, about the families destroyed. He thought about every species in the Coalition that had evolved past predation, that had engineered violence out of their nature. They thought that made them superior. They were about to learn differently. "All ships," he ordered, "prepare for battle. Show them why predators survive." Across the fleet, crews moved to combat stations. Weapons powered up. Engines burned hot. Private Mina checked her gear one more time, thinking about her sister. Major Jisoo briefed her teams on boarding tactics that would terrify the aliens. Nayuri monitored her weapons from Earth, ready to adjust on the fly. And Captain Tae Kwan stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Coalition fleet settle into its perfect, predictable formation. They thought they were hunters coming to discipline prey. They had it exactly backward. "Let's teach them," Tae said quietly. "Fire when ready." The war had begun, and the galaxy was about to discover why humanity had survived every predator Earth had ever produced. They were about to learn what the ultimate predator could do. The Battle of Mars orbit lasted 6 hours, but the outcome was decided in the first 20 minutes. Marshal Vrenis watched from his flagship as the human fleet scattered in what looked like panic. His tactical officers reported that the humans were fleeing in random directions, their formation broken. It seemed too easy. Pursue them, Vrenus ordered. We'll destroy them in small groups. That was his first mistake. The coalition ships broke formation to chase the human vessels, each group confident they could handle a few primitive ships. What they didn't understand was that humans weren't running. They were spreading out to hunt. Lieutenant Wu Hyun led a squadron of 12 fighters, small and fast. They had been running from a coalition cruiser for 10 minutes, letting it chase them deeper into the asteroid belt near Mars. The aliens probably thought they were winning. Now, Wu said calmly, and his squadron stopped running. They spun in perfect coordination, weapons already firing. But they weren't shooting at the cruiser. They were shooting at the asteroids around it. The rocks exploded, sending fragments flying in all directions. The coalition cruiser tried to dodge, but it was built for grace, not quick maneuvers. The asteroid fragments tore into its hull. Before it could recover, Wu's squadron was on it, targeting its engines and weapons. The cruiser went dark, drifting helplessly. That's how wolves hunt, Wu said to his pilots. We separate them from the herd. Then we take them down. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships used the environment, hiding behind moons and debris, striking from unexpected angles. They moved erratically, impossibly, making the coalition's careful targeting systems useless. Every time the aliens thought they had a human ship cornered, 3 more would appear from nowhere. Captain Taekwon watched the battle unfold from his command ship. The tactical display showed coalition vessels going dark one by one. They're panicking, he observed. Look at their movements. They're not coordinating anymore. He was right. The coalition fleet was falling apart. Their ships were trying to group back together, but the humans kept hitting them, forcing them to split up again. The aliens had trained for orderly combat, for following procedures. They had never prepared for chaos. Major Jisu's Marines were waiting for their moment. When a coalition destroyer lost power, drifting helplessly, she gave the order. Board them. Show them what happens up close. The boarding pods launched, small craft that latched onto the alien hull like parasites. Cutting lasers burned through metal. Marines poured into the ship, moving fast through corridors designed for grace, not defense. The coalition crew didn't know how to fight. They ran, they hid, they pleaded. The Marines weren't there to kill, though. They were there to capture the ship and take prisoners. But the aliens were so terrified of the human soldiers that several collapsed from fear alone. Private Kwan Mina was with the boarding team, her sister's death burning in her mind. She expected to feel satisfaction in finally fighting back. Instead, she felt something else as she watched an alien engineer cowering in a corner, shaking with fear. These weren't warriors. They were civilians in uniforms playing at being soldiers. Secure the ship, Jisoo ordered. Medical teams, check the prisoners. No casualties if we can help it. That confused the coalition forces even more. They expected predators to be cruel, to kill without mercy. Instead, the humans were taking prisoners and treating them well. It didn't match what they had been told about humanity. Marshal Vrenus tried to rally his fleet, but the humans weren't giving him time to think. Every time he gave an order, the situation changed. Human ships appeared where sensors said there was nothing. Attacks came from directions that should have been empty space. His tactical officers were overwhelmed, unable to predict what the humans would do next. They don't follow any logical pattern, one officer reported, his voice high with stress. Then find the pattern, Vrenus snapped. But there was no pattern to find. Humans didn't fight like computers. They improvised, adapted, responded to instinct and opportunity. They were everything the coalition had evolved away from, and it made them impossible to predict. After 6 hours, Vrenus gave the order to retreat. Of his 200 ships, only 47 were still combat capable. The rest were destroyed, captured, or drifting without power. The humans had lost 11 vessels. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. Admiral Sung-dae watched the coalition fleet run, their graceful ships fleeing at maximum speed. He could have ordered pursuit, could have destroyed them all, but he didn't. He wanted them to go home. He wanted them to tell everyone what had happened. Let them go, he ordered. They'll spread fear faster than we ever could. He was right. Within days, every coalition world knew about the Battle of Mars orbit. The news spread. Panic across their civilization. Humans were supposed to be primitive, easy to control. Instead, they had torn apart a punishment fleet that should have been unstoppable. Ambassador Velas watched the reports from the diplomatic station, his graceful body trembling. Beside him, Dr. Jihanna read the battle summaries with a sick feeling in her stomach. She had tried to tell them, tried to explain what humans were capable of when threatened. They hadn't listened. "Your species is going to destroy us," Velas said quietly. "No," Jihanna replied. "They're going to make you realize you can't destroy them. There's a difference." But the Coalition didn't see the difference. They saw only that their perfect, peaceful civilization was facing something they couldn't handle. Marshal Vrenis, humiliated by his defeat, demanded a larger fleet. The Coalition Council debated whether to negotiate or escalate. While they debated, humans acted. Captain Taekwon led fast strike groups beyond the solar system, hitting Coalition outposts and supply lines. They didn't destroy everything they found. Sometimes they just damaged a facility enough to disable it. Other times they left supplies untouched but destroyed communication equipment. They were sending a message. "We can reach you anywhere." Lieutenant Woo Hyun became known among Coalition forces as the Hound. His squadron never stopped pursuing targets, chasing them across star systems if necessary. Prey animals understood the terror of being hunted, and the Coalition forces felt it now. They couldn't hide, couldn't rest, couldn't escape. Engineer Nayuri kept improving their weapons based on combat data. She developed jamming systems that blinded Coalition sensors. She created small mines that looked like space debris but could cripple a ship. Every week brought new surprises for the alien forces. Private Kwon Mina earned her first commendation after a boarding action on a Coalition supply ship. She had saved 3 teammates by reacting faster than anyone thought possible, her instincts warning her of danger before sensors showed anything. The Coalition crew had tried to ambush them, but Mina had felt it coming. That was the Predator advantage, the ability to sense threats. Major Jisoo reviewed the combat reports and saw a pattern. Every time they captured Coalition personnel, the aliens were shocked by human behavior. They expected cruelty and found professionalism. They expected murder and found medical care. They expected monsters and found soldiers following rules. "They've never seen controlled violence," she told Admiral Sung-dae. "They think being a predator means being a monster. They don't understand that humans learn to control these instincts. That's what makes us dangerous." Sung nodded slowly. "They removed predation from their species, and with it, they removed the ability to defend themselves. We kept our predatory nature but learned to aim it. We can choose when to be dangerous." The war continued, and the galaxy watched in fear as humanity pushed further into Coalition space. Every battle ended the same way. Coalition forces overwhelmed, outmaneuvered, and terrified. The prey species that had ruled the stars for millennia were learning a harsh lesson. They had forgotten that predators existed for a reason. Nature had never removed them. It had refined them, and humanity was the result of millions of years of refinement. 8 months into the war, civilian analyst Ho Yoon made a discovery in the archives that changed everything. She had been studying Coalition history, looking for weaknesses in their civilization. What she found was much more disturbing than she expected. Ho Yoon sat in her small office on Earth, staring at the translated documents spread across her screens. The Coalition's history went back more than 10,000 years. But there was a gap, a period where records became vague and unclear. She dug deeper, using translation algorithms to work through ancient Coalition texts. The truth was hidden in medical records and genetic databases. 10,000 years ago, the Coalition species had been different. They had predators among them, carnivorous species that hunted and killed. The records showed species that no longer existed, wiped out systematically over centuries. The Coalition hadn't evolved past predation. They had eliminated it. They committed genocide, Ho Yun whispered to herself, multiple times. They killed every predator species in their territory. But it was worse than that. The Coalition species had also modified themselves, using genetic engineering to remove aggressive traits, hunting instincts, territorial behaviors. They had deliberately made themselves docile. What they called evolution was actually self-mutilation on a species-wide scale. She sent her findings to Admiral Sung-dae immediately. Within hours, the information was being reviewed by every human leader. The implications were staggering. Meanwhile, Dr. Jihanna was discovering the same truth from the inside. The Coalition had finally given her limited access to their archives, thinking it would help her understand their perspective. Instead, she found records of the Purge, as they called it. Records of entire species hunted to extinction, because they were deemed too dangerous for civilized space. She confronted Ambassador Velis in the garden where they usually met. The graceful alien tried to explain. It was necessary, he said. The predator species were violent, unpredictable. They threatened the peace we were trying to build. So you killed them all, Jihana said. Every single one. And then you changed yourselves so you could never become like them again. We became better, Velis insisted. We evolved past the need for violence. No, Jihana said firmly. You didn't evolve. You broke yourselves. You removed the parts of your nature that let you survive in a dangerous universe, and now you're paying the price. Velis was quiet for a long moment. You think we were wrong? I think you were afraid, Jihana replied. And fear made you do something terrible. Now you're afraid of us because we remind you of what you destroyed. Commander Young Jae was leading the human push into Coalition space, his fleet moving fast and striking hard. His orders were clear. Demonstrate that humanity could reach any Coalition world, but don't destroy civilian targets. Show strength, not cruelty. His fleet arrived at the Coalition capital system, and panic spread across their worlds. Billions of civilians prepared for the worst, remembering stories of the ancient predator species that had hunted their ancestors. They expected death to rain from the sky. Instead, Young Jae broadcast a message. His ship transmitted on every frequency, making sure everyone in the system could hear. The message wasn't a threat. It was Ho Yoon's research, Jihana's findings, proof of what the Coalition had done to themselves. You built your civilization on murder and self-mutilation, the message said. You killed every species that could defend themselves, then removed your own ability to fight back. Now you call it peace, but it's just weakness disguised as virtue. We didn't come here to conquer you. We came to show you what you've become. The broadcast caused chaos in Coalition space. Some called it propaganda. Others began searching their own archives and found the same terrible history. The Coalition government tried to suppress the information, but it was too late. The truth was spreading across every world. Young Jae's fleet didn't attack. They just stayed in orbit around the capital world, a constant reminder that the Coalition was defenseless. After 3 days, Young Jae ordered his ships to leave. They had made their point. Back on the diplomatic station, Dr. Jihana was under increased guard. The Coalition knew she had learned their secrets. Ambassador Velis visited her one last time before they planned to move her to a more secure location. What you've done is dangerous, Velis said. You've destabilized our entire civilization. Your civilization was already unstable, Jihana replied. You just didn't want to see it. You built everything on a lie, on the idea that removing strength makes you superior. Now reality is forcing you to face the truth. That night, Major Jisoo led a rescue operation. Her team came fast and quiet, their small ships slipping past Coalition defenses that were designed to stop large fleets, not small infiltration teams. They cut through the station's hull and extracted Jihana before alarms even sounded. The rescue was perfect, and no Coalition personnel were harmed. It was another demonstration of human capability, another reminder that the Coalition couldn't protect anything, not even their most secure facilities. When Jihana returned to Earth, she found herself famous. Her research was being taught in schools. Her experience with the Coalition made her the foremost expert on their psychology. Admiral Sung Dae asked her to join the negotiation team that was forming. They're ready to talk, Sung told her. The Coalition government is fracturing. Some want to fight to the end. Others want peace. We need someone who understands both sides. Captain Tai Kwan was recalled from combat operations to lead the human delegation. He was a warrior, but he had never enjoyed war. He understood the necessity of violence, but he also understood when to stop. Lieutenant Woo Hyun was given a choice: continue as a squadron leader, or become part of the new Combined Defense Initiative, training Coalition pilots. He chose training, surprising many. Someone has to teach them, he explained. If we don't, they'll never survive the next threat. Private Kwan Mina received a medal for her actions during the war. She attended the ceremony, but her mind was elsewhere. She kept thinking about the Coalition prisoners she had guarded, how terrified they had been. They weren't evil. They were just helpless, and that had made them dangerous in their own way. Engineer Nayuri was already working on the next phase, defensive technology that the Coalition could actually use. Weapons designed for species that couldn't think like predators, systems that automated much of the tactical decision-making. She was designing tools that would let prey defend themselves. The Coalition Council met in emergency session, debating their response. Marshal Vrenus wanted to continue fighting, to conscript larger armies to somehow overcome the human advantage through sheer numbers. But others pointed out the obvious. Every battle proved that numbers didn't matter. Humans were simply better at war. A moderate faction led by Ambassador Velis argued for negotiation. They could have destroyed us, Velis said. Commander Young Jay's fleet sat above our capital world. He could have bombarded our cities. Instead, he showed us the truth and left. Perhaps humans are not the monsters we thought. The vote was close, but the moderates won. The coalition sent a message to Earth. They were willing to talk. Admiral Sung Dae read the message and felt relief wash over him. He had been a soldier his entire life, and he had never wanted this war. He had fought because he had no choice, because the coalition had forced humanity into a corner. But now there was a way out. He called his commanders together, Tae, Jisoo, Young Jae, all the officers who had led humanity to victory. We've proved what we needed to prove, he told them. They know we can't be caged. They know we can reach them anywhere. Now we show them we can also choose peace. The meeting was set to take place at a neutral station, built specifically for the negotiations. It would take weeks to prepare. But for the first time in 8 months, there was hope that the killing might stop. The neutral station hung in empty space between human and coalition territory. They called it Hope's End, a name that acknowledged both the destruction of the war and the possibility of something better. Captain Tae Kwan arrived first, his diplomatic ship carrying representatives from Earth and her colonies. Dr. Ji Hana stood beside him as they docked. Her knowledge of coalition culture invaluable for what was coming. Ambassador Velis arrived hours later, leading a delegation that represented the fracturing coalition government. The elegant alien looked tired, his movements less graceful than before. The war had aged him in ways that showed even across species barriers. They met in a large chamber designed to accommodate different biology. Humans breathed naturally while coalition representatives wore devices that adjusted the atmosphere for them. For a long moment, both sides simply looked at each other, predator and prey meeting as equals for the first time. Thank you for coming, Tae said formally. We have much to discuss. The negotiations were difficult. Marshal Vrenus, attending via communication link, demanded that humanity return to Earth and accept quarantine. He spoke of ancient laws and coalition sovereignty. His anger was clear, his pride wounded by military defeat. Tae listened patiently, then responded with simple truth. Marshal, your fleets couldn't enforce the quarantine. We broke it. That's reality. We can argue about law and rights, but at the end, we're sitting here because you couldn't keep us caged. Velis winced at the bluntness, but he didn't disagree. What do you want? He asked quietly. Recognition, Jihana said. Humanity didn't choose to be predators. Evolution made us this way. You can fear us, hate us, try to destroy us, but we won't disappear to make you comfortable. We exist and we have the right to exist. The debates continued for days. The coalition wanted guarantees that humanity wouldn't become conquerors. Humans wanted assurance that the coalition wouldn't try to quarantine them again. Trust was scarce on both sides. It was Private Kwan Mina, surprisingly, who helped break the deadlock. She had been invited as a representative of the combat forces, and she sat quietly through most discussions. But when Marshal Vrenus again brought up humanity's violent nature, she spoke up. My sister died in the New Dawn attack, Mina said. Her voice was steady, controlled. You killed her and her children because you were afraid of us. I spent 8 months fighting your forces, and I had every reason to hate you. But I don't. You know why? The coalition representatives waited, and Mina continued. Because I saw your soldiers. They weren't warriors. They were scared civilians playing at war. They didn't want to fight any more than I wanted my sister dead. Fear made you kill her. Fear made me fight you. But fear is a choice. We can choose something else, the words hung in the air. Velis looked at the young human woman, seeing not a predator but a person carrying grief and choosing not to let it become hatred. What would you have us choose? Velis asked. Cooperation, Admiral Sung Dae said, joining the conversation. Your civilization removed predators because you thought they were dangerous. You were right, they are dangerous. But danger has a purpose. Predators protect. They defend. They hunt threats so others don't have to. You're suggesting we need you. another coalition representative said, his tone skeptical. No, Sung replied. I'm suggesting we need each other. You have thousands of years of peaceful development, technology, and culture we can barely imagine. We have the ability to defend that civilization. Together, we're stronger than apart. The coalition delegation broke to discuss privately. Hours passed while they debated. The human team waited, knowing this was the critical moment. Lieutenant Woo Hyun, present as a military advisor, spent the time reviewing tactical displays. Engineer Nayuri worked on technical specifications for the defensive systems she had designed. Commander Young Jae simply sat quietly, thinking about the battles he had fought and hoping they would be the last. When the coalition returned, Velas spoke for them. We have a proposal. The coalition will recognize human sovereignty over 15 light years around your sun. In exchange, humanity will serve as the coalition's defense force. You'll protect our borders, train our personnel, and respond to threats we cannot handle. Tae considered the offer. It was generous in some ways, restrictive in others. 15 light years was substantial territory, but it was also a limitation on human expansion. We need access to coalition space, Ji Hana said. Trade routes, cultural exchange, joint colonies. We won't be separate species sharing a galaxy. We need to be partners. That's what frightens us, Velas admitted. Humans in our space living on our worlds. How do we know you won't eventually take control? How do we know you won't try to quarantine us again? Tae countered. Trust goes both ways. The final agreement took 3 more days to compose. Humanity would have sovereignty over their core territory but freedom to travel throughout coalition space. Joint colonies would be established as testing grounds for cooperation. Human military forces would train coalition defense personnel, sharing tactics and technology. In exchange, the coalition would share their advanced science, their medical knowledge, their cultural achievements. Major Jisoo would lead the joint peacekeeping forces, commanding both human and coalition personnel. Lieutenant Woo Hyun would establish the first training academy, teaching coalition pilots to think defensively. Engineer Nayuri would work with coalition scientists to develop defensive technology that prey species could actually use. The treaty was signed on a day that would be remembered by both civilizations. Admiral Sung Dae, representing Earth, pressed his hand to the document alongside Ambassador Velas's delicate fingers. The image was broadcast across human and coalition worlds, predator and prey, choosing peace. 3 years later, everything had changed. Captain Tae Kwan, now promoted to admiral, served on coalition high command. He worked alongside Velas, who had become one of humanity's strongest advocates. The relationship was sometimes difficult, instincts clashing with reason, but it worked. Dr. Ji Hana ran the Institute for Predator-Prey Relations, teaching coalition species about human psychology and teaching humans about their new allies. Her work was helping both sides understand each other, breaking down the fears that had caused so much death. Private Kwan Mina had become a symbol of reconciliation. She worked with coalition youth, helping traumatized civilians recover from the war. She had befriended a young coalition child who had lost parents in human attacks. Together, they proved that healing was possible. The joint colonies were thriving. Humans and coalition species lived side by side, learning from each other. It wasn't always easy. Human children sometimes scared coalition neighbors with their aggressive play. Coalition efficiency sometimes frustrated human spontaneity, but they were learning to adapt. Then came the message that changed everything. An urgent transmission from the coalition border worlds, showing ships of an unknown design attacking settlements. These weren't the graceful vessels of the coalition or the aggressive craft of humanity. These ships were something else entirely, and they were destroying everything they encountered. Admiral Sung Dae, retired but called back for the emergency, watched the recordings with growing concern. They're not trying to communicate. They're not taking territory. They're just killing, Admiral Tae Kwan agreed. We need to respond fast. The Coalition Council met in emergency session. In the past, they would have panicked, debated, delayed. Now they did something different. They sent a message to Earth. The predators are coming. We need the humans. Lieutenant Woo Hyun, now a commander, led the first response fleet. It was a mixed force, human ships working alongside coalition vessels. His coalition students flew with his squadron, their training finally being tested. The enemy ships were powerful, aggressive, built for war. They attacked the relief fleet immediately. But this time, the coalition forces didn't panic. They followed their training, working in coordination with the human ships. They still weren't as good as humans at combat, but they were learning. The battle was hard, but the combined fleet held. Human tactical thinking and coalition technical precision proved to be a strong combination. The enemy ships retreated, surprised by the organized resistance. Back on Coalition High Command, Admiral Tay Quan watched the battle reports with Velis beside him. The graceful alien looked at the human, predator and prey standing together against a common threat. "We would have run," Velis said quietly. "Before you, we would have just run." "But you didn't," Tay replied. "You called for help. You stood and fought. That's what allies do." Dr. Jihanna recorded her thoughts that night, knowing historians would want her perspective. "They called us monsters once," she said into the recorder. "They feared us, tried to cage us, fought us. Now they call us guardians. Perhaps we were always meant to be both. The galaxy needed its predators after all, not to destroy but to protect. And we needed them to remind us what we're protecting." Commander Wu Hyun's fleet prepared for another jump, heading deeper into hostile territory to protect Coalition worlds. His squadron included both humans and Coalition pilots, predator and prey flying together. Private Mina, now a sergeant, led a Marine detachment that included Coalition volunteers. They were training for boarding actions, prey species learning to fight alongside humans. Engineer Na Yuri continued her work, developing new defensive systems that combined human innovation with Coalition technology. Every day brought new discoveries, new possibilities. The unknown enemy remained a threat, but for the first time the Coalition wasn't facing it alone. They had guardians now, predators who had chosen to protect rather than destroy, and humanity had found its purpose among the stars, not as conquerors but as the shield that defended the defenseless. In the end, the war had proved something neither side expected. Humanity wasn't the galaxy's ultimate predator because they were the best at killing. They were the ultimate predator because they knew when to stop, when to protect, when to choose peace over victory. That was the difference between a monster and a guardian. And that was why, in the vast darkness between stars, the galaxy needed both predator and prey working together to survive.